Mille Kathio State Park, located near the south shore of Lake Mille in Minnesota, is my most recent destination for hammock camping within a couple hours of the Twin Cities. I camped at one of the 4 remote backpacking sites at the park. I was at the Glacial Ridge site. They have a special parking lot where you can access trails for Glacial Ridge and the Black Bass trails. Here's the hiking trail for my site, which was right off the parking lot. It's a well-groomed trail, but kind of narrow, but it's only 3/4 of a mile through the woods. Here's a montage of scenes as I walked through the woods to get to my site. You can see the beginning of some early fall colors in the third week of September, but there were still some wildflowers along the trail. When you get to this point, you find this sign. The trail divides one way to the left and the right. If you take the right, it's 3/4 of a mile. If you take the left, it's probably about 1.5 miles. With my pack, I decided to go with the 3/4. Here's a fallen tree obstacle in front of the trail. Here's another tree which apparently the park rangers had taken care of earlier. I was really intrigued by this huge knot in this tree. It isn't long before you start noticing some scenes of a lake and a marsh. This is a beaver pond. It's sort of a small lake, actually. As you approach it, you end up walking across some wooden boardwalks through marshy areas. And you can see the reeds in the marsh there. It's actually more like a small lake than a beaver pond. Here's another wooden walkway to cross a wet area. I almost lost the trail, but fortunately they have these little blue ribbons tied around some trees and plants as trail markers, and so I was able to keep going through this part that was a little overgrown. You follow around the beaver pond and end up walking about halfway around it to access the campsite. Along the way, you're going to see some beaver work. Here's one where they actually were able to fell the tree. Well, it didn't take too long to get to my campsite, Glacial Ridge. I hung up my reservation card on the signpost and then walked maybe about 100 yards farther into the woods to get to the site. It's pretty secluded in the woods, which I liked, but it's also located pretty close to the shoreline of the Beaver Pond, the small lake. There's the site, you can see it. And here's the view of the lake from the picnic table in the campsite. Walking a little closer to the shore, here's what the lake looks like. These 2 trumpeter swans were there the entire time I was there. I guess they lived there. It was a pleasure to see them. There's a beaver lodge. I didn't see them, but I sure heard them splashing around at night. That was fun. Some amenities on the site: this nice fire ring, full-size picnic table, and in the background you can see the tent pad. The description of the site online claimed it had a latrine, but I didn't see it right away. But finally I noticed a path. If you look from the picnic table towards the tent pad, you can see it going off toward the right. I decided to put down a couple of logs as an indication of where it was so I could find it easier at night. You go down a hill into a little valley, and then, well, there it is. You know, it's funny, after only a year of backpacking, I've come to appreciate how facilities like this are actually pretty good. It's starting to get cold in September at night, so I wanted to be able to sleep warm. I have this thermal pad, but I've slept on top of it directly, and I didn't like the way the edges felt on my arms. So I tried an experiment, and I tucked it under my hammock, in between that and the underquilt, and that worked out great. I slept really well. Well, here's my site all set up with the rainfly and the hammock toward the lake side. Again, those trumpeter swans, they were great. They stayed there the whole time. I was able to get some nice pictures of them. They didn't seem very shy. There's no bear box at the site, so I hung my food. I decided to try out something I saw on YouTube, the Pacific Crest Trail, PCT, method of hanging a food bag. So I took the bag that my rainfly stakes came in, and I put some rocks in it for weight. And then I tossed them over a branch. And once that was done, I removed the little bag, and then I attached a carabiner to my food bag. and then hooked up the cord to the carabiner. Once that's done, then you thread the other part of the cord through the carabiner, and then you heft up the bag as far as it'll go. Once that's done, you reach up as high as you can and you tie a stick to the cord. I used a clove hitch to get it off easy. You release the cord and the bag comes down a little bit and the stick hits the carabiner, and then the bag is suspended 12 to 15 feet up. I've heard stories that bears can swipe cords that are tied to trees and actually drop a food bag. Apparently with this method they might be able to pull the cord, but the food doesn't come down. It seems kind of brilliant. As the sun set, the swans still stayed with me and occasionally made that great trumpeting sound. There was almost a full moon while I was there, provided a lot of light at night. Of course, additional light was provided by the campfire, which I kept going for a couple of hours. Heard a couple of owls and a couple of beaver splashes during the night. The next morning I was woken up promptly at 6:30 to the sound of duck season in Minnesota. Heard a lot of rifle shots. For a short time, it almost sounded like a reenactment of Gettysburg or something. There were so many pops. But eventually it subsided by 8. Anyway, I got out of the hammock at 6:30. I saw this early morning sky. You know that rhyme, red in the morning, sailor take warning? It didn't seem to be in effect. The clouds dissipated and we had a beautiful sunrise and a nice day after that. Shortly after sunrise, a flock of geese landed on the lake, and they started honking loudly and seemed to be chasing at each other, which seemed to upset the trumpeter swans. Aren't those distinctive trumpeter sounds cool? Well, anyway, the sun rose over the lake and it quickly warmed up my campsite. It was chilly at night, probably in the 40s, but it warmed up to the low to mid 60s most of the day. It was a very nice fall day. I had breakfast and then I decided it was time to hike over to the Black Bass campsite, which I knew was unoccupied at the time, but it was going to be occupied later. It's a popular site, and that's why I chose Glacial Ridge, because I couldn't get into Black Bass. So I thought I'd take a look. The trailhead is actually across the street from the ranger station. You have to walk past this ranger station and cross the road. The trail is wide. It's shared by equestrians. I actually ran across 3 women on their horses while I was hiking. So maybe about a mile, mile and a quarter, you start seeing the lake. And a mile and a half from the trailhead, here's the Black Bass site. You walk down the hill and look at what you get. It is this beautiful site right on the lake. I can see why it's so popular. I certainly hope to reserve it sometime. Here's another view of Black Bass Lake. Amenities for the campground: they also have a nice picnic table and fire ring. There's the tent pad. These are all very close to the lake shore. It's just gorgeous. As you can see, there's plenty of trees for hanging a hammock. And check it out. It looks like they got themselves a brand new latrine too. Here's another picture of the lake. It's just so pretty there. There was a pair of loons floating around while I was there, but every time I pointed the camera at them, they ducked under the surface. Early signs of fall, some brilliant colors on this leaf. And there were woolly bear caterpillars everywhere. I had to avoid stepping on them. The park has a lot of attractions, including the Interpretive Center, which informs you about the archaeological discoveries in the region of the park. Check out this cool sign. People have visited this area for thousands of years. You're the latest visitor. Welcome. I really like that. Inside the Interpretive Center, you learn that as early as 9,000 years ago, there's evidence that nomadic peoples were in the area hunting bison, like a larger bison that's now extinct. That just blew my mind to think about. Other displays talk about peoples that were here 3,500 years ago. camping and setting up villages in the area, like at 1500 BC. And later on, of course, there were villages in the 1600s when French explorers visited them. And it's just so cool to learn about this history. One of the picnic areas in the park is the location of one of those villages, and it's just really neat to know that while you're eating there. One of the other notable attractions at the park is the 100-foot fire tower that was moved there in the 80s. It's about 100 feet tall, looks kind of spindly, it has several flights of stairs. I think after the 5th or 6th flight we were above the trees. This one's pretty well colored for September. Way at the top, here's a view of Lake Mille. I'm guessing you can see 20 to 30 miles from the top of the tower. I was surprised that on a Saturday afternoon I had the tower to myself. Looking down, that's about 100 feet down. Look out below. There's no glass in these windows, it's open air. And since I had the place to myself, I decided to sit and rest my feet for a little bit. It was kind of nice, and then I heard some people coming, so I moved on. I really got lucky on the weather for this trip. It had rained the week before the Friday that I left to go there, and it rained the Monday after I got back. Going back to my car, I noticed that on the trail someone had cut that tree that was an obstacle that had fallen across the trail. Thank you, rangers at Mille's Kathio State Park, for maintaining the trails and for being such nice folks. I really enjoyed my stay here. Well, thanks for watching.